Welcome again to the day after interview discussion series with prominent members and personalities from our political, academic, and business societies, discussing issues pertaining to the goals of the Club of Rome as they develop after the pandemic crisis. Today, we're deeply honored to host as our main guest and keynote speaker, a globally recognized authority on water, environment, and sustainable development issues, Professor Michael Scoullos. He will be addressing the very important topic of security issues in Greece and the Mediterranean and the water, energy, food ecosystems nexus. Professor Michael Scoullos is an environmental water chemist and oceanographer with his PhD from the University of Liverpool. He's a professor emeritus on environmental chemistry at the University of Athens, founder and for many years director of the Laboratory of Environmental Chemistry, director of the UNESCO Chair and Network on Management and Education for Sustainable Development in the Mediterranean, chairman of the Mediterranean Information Office for Environment, Culture and Sustainable Development, and coordinator of MEDIS, chairman of the Global Water Partnership, Mediterranean, team leader of the large EU program Water and Environment Support, WEST, in the ENI South Neighborhood region. He has been, he is chairman of the Greek National Commission of MAB UNESCO, and he is chairman and co-chairman in a number of other international environmental organizations and panels of experts. He has been the representative of the European Parliament in the Mediterranean Board and the Bureau of the European Environment Agency, past president of the European Environment Bureau. He has been awarded the Gold Medal of the City of Paris, Simon Bolívar Medal of UNESCO, Environmental Award of the Academy of Athens, and many, many other distinctions, international distinctions. Dear Professor, I want to welcome you to today's interview discussion, and just to restate how glad we are to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased and honored to be also a member of the Club of Rome, the Greek chapter, and very happy to have the discussion with you.
At this point, I would also like to welcome our distinct members of our panel, Mr. Alexandros Drivas and Mr. Dimitris Scoullos. And I would like to say a few words about them. Mr. Drivas is a strategic analyst, PhD candidate on Greek-American relations, working for the Hellenic American Leadership Council as a research fellow. He's also cooperating with HuffPost, Michael Ignatiou, Liberal GR as a strategic analyst, also working for the Hellenic Institute for Strategic Studies. And finally, he's a commentator in a number of radio and television channels. I welcome you also to our panel. Mr. Dimitris Scoullos is a development and commercial manager of Greenesco Energy SA, a member of groups PPCR and Attica Finance, a business development and sales director, advisor, and strategic planner, experienced in introducing pioneering intelligent energy solutions to building other facilities, encouraging technological innovation and the green transition. He cultivates synergies, partnerships, memorandums, and the implementation of environmental awareness programs in collaboration with public institutions, NGOs, and the CSR departments of large corporations. Mr. Scoullos, welcome to our panel.
Thank you for the invitation.
Just to open our discussion, I would like to say that we live in turbulent times, in an age of rapid transformations, in an era that the past and the present collide with the future, as the way of life as we know it based on the current socioeconomic models of growth and development needs to be completely reevaluated and redesigned. Major pillars for these changes are the environment, the energy, and the water, and they're all interrelated. I don't know, Mr. Drivas, if you would like to open our question session with...
Yes, of course, sir. So, Mr. Scoullos, I would like to open the questions with the first one. Could you make a forecast about the future of Greek environmental and economic growth under the ongoing crisis between Greece and Turkey?
Well, this is a very important issue. I don't know. I'm going to use a small presentation in order to further elaborate on that, if you allow me. I have prepared a small presentation. In fact, I do believe that, as the chairman said, we are living in a turbulent period, and the different relationships, including the one of the with our neighbor, is, in my point of view, influenced by many, of course, factors, internal factors in Turkey, in the region, but also to a large extent, when we are talking about security issues, we are talking about security of national security, traditional security issues, or energy security, or water security. There are many things that actually may describe the mix that national security is based upon. So, in my point of view, some of the recent tensions between Greece and Turkey are closely linked with the whole discussion about the energy issue, and particularly the demonstrated willingness of not only of Greece but also of Cyprus, of Israel, of Egypt, to participate in tripartite exploration, exploitation activities of hydrocarbons in the region, primarily natural gas, in the rather deep offshore wells of the Aegean and the Eastern Mediterranean. So, in my point of view, when approaching in periods of complexity, enhanced complexity also with COVID, the relationships with our neighbor, we need to examine and re-examine the root causes of that, and see it is, I think, important to assess the geopolitical security risks versus expected benefits from whatever activities related to the exploration and exploitation of hydrocarbons. I have to say that the offshore exploration, exploitation of hydrocarbons, it's not an easy thing. It is something that is, apart from being expensive, it still includes, despite progress in technology, serious dangers. Starting from the process itself for the collection and management of the cuttings, of the opening of the wells, eventual losses, potential oil spills, serious pollution, technical problems, and also going from the drilling to the decommissioning of the platforms at the end of the operations. And if you take this together with where these are going to take place, near Greek islands, which are the main source of tourism, source of income from tourism, and the reactions that we are going to have from the local communities, from environmental organizations, from the international community on this, we have to be at least very careful in how we are proceeding with these choices. Why we are doing that? Because I'm going back 5 years, and I quote a Turkish actually expert, the director of Hydrocarbons in the Paris-based Mediterranean Energy Observatory just 5 years ago. And he said, quite rightly, that we are going to have a rise about 50% in demand, in energy demand, till 2030. That is in 10 years' time, is tomorrow. So what his vision was, and what he announced in this international forum, were 3 additional nuclear power plants in Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey. Energy security will push Mediterranean countries, I quote, to coal, and Algeria, Libya, and Egypt to eliminate the big energy waste, and Israel moving from oil to natural gas. From these predictions, perhaps the last one seems to be at the moment towards the prediction, the direction. And why we are talking about that? Because this projection was is a vision typical to business as usual, based on fossil fuels. And this is the way that a big part of the energy community still thinks or tries to convince others that this is still the only solution. However, already in 2019, in Europe, we have more renewables than fossil, 38% generation from clean energy versus 34% from fossil fuel. Even in Greece, that we usually say that we are behind or whatever, we are approaching, we have 18%, so we are very close to the 2020 target for 20%. And of course, Greece is, together with other countries, behind, as you see in the north, despite despite the fact that we have more favorable climate here. We, as all other Mediterranean countries, are behind in renewables. I don't want to get into explanation of that. So let's see if this is only in Europe. It's not. The first quarter of 2020, the global use of renewable was 1.5% higher than the first quarter of 19. And we had 3% in renewable electricity generation, and 100 gigawatts of solar and 60 gigawatts of wind power projects completed in 2019. And the same is also the tendency in the United States. Renewables are also resilient to lower electricity demand, more flexible. I don't want to get into that. And still, I just want to say that the share of renewables in global electricity generation jumped in the first quarter of 2020 to nearly 28% from 26%. So a net increase by 2%. And at the same time, the increase in renewable came mainly at the cost of coal and gas. Of course, still they are close to 60% of global electricity supply. But in the first quarter of 2020, the variable renewables in the form of solar and wind reached 9% of generation, 1% more in 1 year. These are elements that are optimistic and need to be taken seriously into account in projections. I also want to say that in the estimate for 2020, renewable energy demand increases above the 19 level, and nearly 5%, despite the supply chain construction delays caused by COVID-19. The only major uncertainty with renewables comes from hydropower, and this is linked linked to climate change. The uncertainties account for almost 60% of all renewable generation globally, and this is linked again to rainfall and temperature, as I said, with climate change, but this is also linked with transboundary tensions. I show you here the hydropower in Southeast Europe, and you see how many are in already existing, the black, under construction, the yellow, and the planned red. And you can imagine that for Greece, that is a downstream country, construction of hydropower plants or whatever upstream has, despite the international conventions, this might have also implications in our relationship with neighbors. Already we have problems of this kind with some of the neighbors. And what also Bulgaria has done in the Nexus region. So the latest report of Forbes shows that over the last decade, we had amazing drop in the prices in photovoltaics and also wind. Drops of 70 to 90%. And in many places already the cost of renewable generation is below the existing conventional sources like coal, natural gas, and nuclear. So one of the reasons is, of course, the technology, the different design, much larger wind turbines, of course, with their own environmental problems, particularly also aesthetic, not only aesthetic, also in biodiversity, some problems. But in my point of view, at global level, there is no comparison to the risks. So we have, and we are going to have also, we have also many decentralized energy generation systems for small islands at reasonable prices, not the price we had only 10 years ago. And then we come to the new EU Green Deal. The Green Deal, if we are going to follow it, comes with 750 billion euros. And if you take also the targeted reinforcements for the period 21-27, we reach something like 1.8, 1.9 trillions, which is a considerable, driving for policies in the countries of the Union first and the neighborhood. And the first and most important of this is the carbon neutrality. We need by 2050 to have zero net emissions, zero. And at the same time, we need to enhance innovation, rely on hydrogen. This is linked to the EU leadership. This is linked to the new vision for new jobs. It has included that nobody will be left behind. And also, importantly, also the no harm principle. I don't know if everybody has understood that, but no harm principle means that while at the moment nuclear power is considered clean, renewable, it is not any longer, and it will not be if at the end of the day this strategy is going to be implemented as announced. There will not be support for nuclear energy. That gives all the benefits to the renewables. So I just want to share all that because these are the facts we know at the moment. And this is what came just after COVID. 91 billion earmarked for, particularly for energy saving, rooftop solar panels, insulation. 15 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity in the next 2 years, with 25 billion there. 10 billion euro fund for to be administered by the European Investment Bank for renewable energy and clean hydrogen. Green hydrogen to replace by 50-50. Part of the Green Deal is this. And approximately 2 million electric and hydrogen vehicle charging stations by 2025. That is just tomorrow. So if these are implemented, we have to, I think, to take them seriously into account and prepare for that instead of trying risky, at all levels risky, exercises. This is my my belief, but I'm not talking about Europe alone. It's not Europe because everybody says Trump has actually changed things.
Can I make one question before we get into the international, the US environment, and do you really believe that it will be feasible to make Europe climate neutral by 2050 as the aim and the goal is?
I think that it is feasible. I don't know to what extent, to be very honest, I don't have the information on the progress of hydrogen, because hydrogen is something that was started in the 70s and even before, and it took many years actually to accumulate critical knowledge to have it at reasonable prices. This will be, I think, the next big step. Apparently, Europe is strong in research and innovation in this area. If this, I don't know, but this is the big, let's say, the major, I think, the major expectation. I don't think that we can reach this target with solar and wind alone. We will need also hydrogen. From the moment that we have it, it will be an expansion. It will be something, you know, very rapidly will take off. And there are many universities, including in Greece, including in the University of Athens. There are groups working for the last 10 years on hydrogen. So this is my answer is it is feasible, provided that the plans for hydrogen become a reality.
Can I ask you something? Do you believe that there will be more difficulties related to the energy security?
If it will be more visible?
More difficulties related to the energy security in our area?
More difficulties as it concerns the relationship with the neighbors, perhaps, because there are many different priorities, even within each of our, even in our governments, even in our country, but also in the neighborhood, with many different priorities about the gas, the different routes, all these kind of things that have been planned more than 10 years ago. And this is one of the big problems. The inertia in energy policies creates complexity of international relationships that actually follow for many years the relationships between the countries. And it is very difficult to have in the international relationships the flexibility that modern technology requires. The modern technology is not any longer as it was even in the 80s and 90s, and even in the beginning of this millennium. It is fast, and it will become faster. And this is the big, the complexity comes from the governance structures that are closer to the 19th century than to the 22nd. And there is the big issue. The big issue is that there is a big gap between these two things. The institutional reforms needed are basic, and no country is at the moment ready, because no country could change alone. So the international governance, which is the most important thing to have, unfortunately, with tendencies and problems coming from some of the big powers, delay the strengthening of international governance. And actually, this is what the Club of Rome already in its Limits to Growth report has indicated early enough, that some of the complexities will come from the increase of the population, but also on the gap that is created between actually technology and decision-making processes.
Thank you very much. I was asking you because we know that Greece is a critical energy conduit for oil, gas, and electricity, especially now with the new streams for natural gas. Do you believe that we can keep this important place in our area?
I think we have to, and we don't start, but if we can, but of what we have to. So if we have to, and if we use the right flexible policies and not be trapped, because this is a big problem, trapping, I mean, many countries of the region are trapped by visions and past decisions or past promises. We may play a very important role. And actually, I think we are the only ones who can play this role in this region. Not because of our size, but of our position in the political scene, if we play it properly. But this requires, I hope we'll obtain that, this requires some, not only diplomatic skills, but also linking diplomatic skills with actually with very high level of knowledge. It is more and more the knowledge capital is becoming the most important strategic I'm sure Mr. Drivas knows that better than me, a very, very important strategic capital. So allow me to continue with the US, because what it was published in the Forbes recently, it says that the new US Energy Information Administration data predicts solar and wind energy, I quote, to dominate America's new generation in 2020, making up 75% of new generation and adding 42 gigawatts of zero emission capacity, while coal and natural gas retirements will result in 85% of plant closures. I don't know, I quote that, but the same organization says that US electricity generation from renewable energy exceeded also in the United States. It is not a coincidence that in 2019, both in the EU and in the United States, we have actually the renewables getting higher than the fossil. So for me, this is a strong signal, a strong confirmation of my instinct and my reading. And this is what I think it is important to be analyzed and taken into account. Despite the pro-fossil fuel Trump administration push, let's say, we have US solar installations hitting the 19 gigawatts, and you see that this shows that even with unfavorable incentives, technology and economy go towards a particular direction. So I had a discussion recently with VP high-level a person in this high decision maker, and he said to me that, well, it is a total wrong image we have, particularly during this administration, because we don't sell fuel, we sell energy, and we get the energy from whatever source, and the most appropriate source at the moment is not any longer fuel. So this is something said to me in Lebanon in a very high level meeting, where another representative from shareholders base, he said, well, don't worry, we are not going to any problem with shares on fuel, because the rest will take care of the climate change. There will be always an important niche for us, and will be there to secure our shareholders that they are not going to lose money. So you see the tendencies. These are two persons that I can, bring you the result of our discussions there, and I just wanted to share that with you in this discussion here. You can see that because of the COVID, all the development comes at the end of 2020, and we see 44% increase in wind, 32 in solar, and only 8.3 in natural gas. So this is not only Europe, it's not only the Green Deal, it is international, and is something that has to be taken absolutely, seriously. We need to. I'm not an economist, and I don't want to get into that. Perhaps Mr. Polias knows better, but there is a need for serious adaptations and reforms in order get profit of the new developments. That is, in simple words, what I wanted to say. Now, it is not only Greece, it is in many Mediterranean countries, and not only in energy, but in many other areas, including the water, including the way in which energy is going to influence water and vice versa. And we need to understand, particularly in our part of the world, what integration means. Integration of policies. We cannot decide on energy policies separately from the water policies, separate from the agricultural policies, separate from the transport policies, and so on and so forth. There is no way any longer, because everything is so closely related, and economy cannot afford this division. So this is absolutely important, and this is also the key of the Green Deal, because the Green Deal takes into account that countries, and there is a big difficulty, not so much in the technology. I go back again to the governments. Takes for granted the European Union that the countries will harmonize their policies and make them integrated. So, which is for many, many years one of the main aims of the European Union. Still, we have like caterpillars, some heads going actually to the right direction, and long tails that, you know, follow in with inertia. So this is the issue. So in this way, we need to consider actually the water, energy, food ecosystem nexus, on which I would like to discuss a little bit more, because it brings in two of the key, very big key issues, which are the issues of the biodiversity loss and the climate change. And this is actually where I would like to emphasize a little bit more. I don't know if there is any question from you.
So we could, in a sense, summarize that we have large investments in the developing countries, urgent need for appropriate reforms in Greece and in other countries, and also harmonization of national policies. And now we have the introduction of the Nexus concept in 2011, I believe, linking water to energy and to food. I don't know if Mr. Scoullos wants to, or Mr. Drivas wants to ask something about that.
Can I make a question considering the environmental? About the Nexus approach, why you're using the narrative of a Nexus? Isn't it difficult what you try to convey through this term?
Well, it is difficult to a certain extent, but because it is a new concept, sometimes the same as with sustainable development, we need to use some new words in order to attract the attention and explain. It is something that everybody understands by instinct, but we need to make it clear because it is not very easy for everybody immediately to understand. But everybody knows, for example, that let me use that, for example, the energy-water relationship is visible to everybody. We know that a lot of energy and renewable energy comes from hydrocarbon, from hydropower. A lot of water is used by industry for cooling purposes. Energy is used for extraction of water, for irrigation, for desalination, for treatment of wastewater, of gray water, and so on and so forth. Also, we understand the energy-food connection from the production itself, from harvesting, from livestock, from transport, from treatment of foodstuffs. So this is clear, the energy to water, the energy relations to food. And this has been, let's say, enhanced, increased, this relationship also with the issue of climate change, on which we may say a few things. But also it is linked with directly and indirectly with the biodiversity and ecosystems, because it is energy produces also byproducts, emissions, the generation and use, so pollution that creates problems to biodiversity. Modern methods also have impacts on biodiversity, and the water cycle, in the way it is influenced, for example, if I have a dam for hydro production and I disrupt the ecological flow of the river downstream, automatically this affects, let's say, the wetland downstream and biodiversity. So it is absolutely now clear that these cannot be separated, and we need to see all the four. We started with the three: energy, water, food, and ecosystems were added recently, particularly because we have this enormous loss of biodiversity. We are talking about losing species every day. So it is, and it's not because we like butterfly or the beauty of a flower, which is also important since we cannot create it or recreate it. It is also because it is linked very closely with the COVID, very closely with what is the security, the links of biodiversity to health. So all this is the security now, is a Nexus security, is water, energy, food, ecosystem security. And this is why we are talking about the need to visualize also the Nexus. The Nexus, to understand it as from a system of tensions, for example, between us and the neighbors, we have also other issues. We have also issues related less with water. We have with our northern neighbors. We have also on issues with biodiversity, the introduction of alien species, for example, in the Prespa Lake by the Albanians for aquaculture. That was very a failure. But anyhow, there are many kinds of tensions over all the aspects, including, of course, agriculture. So the idea is to turn the Nexus from a system of tensions in a system of convergence. And how we can do that, it is more easily understood by using a tetrahedron. I have introduced the tetrahedron because the tetrahedron offers a space. And this space offers flexibility in negotiation, where you give and take, and it's not necessarily to give or take more water, but the benefits of water, the benefits of energy. Already this is understood in some countries. For example, if there is a better place to have a dam in your neighboring country, you don't negotiate for more water or a quota on water. You negotiate on getting a share of energy, and so on and so forth. So there are more opportunities through Nexus to address the security of each one of them. So, and the same is also for agriculture and irrigation and agricultural products and negotiations and agreements on this kind of collaboration in agricultural production, many other things that were and still are rather rare in the international diplomacy. So this is important, to have this space, and this is the only way in which we can optimize the achievement of SDGs. The SDGs, we need all the 17 SDGs and 169 tasks to be reached. And this cannot be all together. It's not one or two. We need all of them. So this requires integration, and within integration, it requires a number of tools to obtain that. And the Nexus approach provides, let's say, this kind of tools, and helps in opening. Not in abolishing, or as we say, silos, because I don't believe that we can abolish silos. They are deeply rooted, and there are good reasons for that. But opening channels, opening enough channels among the different silos, at least the 4 silos we are discussing here. So it is a feasible thing. It's something that requires a systematic work, an investment of time, energy, and resources, but the result is undoubtedly positive. And we need also to take into account the specificities, the elasticity, let's say, of each one. For example, when we deal with water and energy, we have more elasticity. We produce it here, transfer it there. The same is with agricultural production through commerce or whatever. This is not the case with ecosystems. We cannot replace them and send them away. So we need, when we approach these issues, to see exactly where are the limits. And the limits are set, again, as the Club of Rome has said many times, by the systems themselves. The systems are the ones that require a specific treatment. So this is a very important aspect. And I give you one only example to understand that when we approach in this way different options, we come with much wiser responses. See this, for example. This is to produce 1 cubic meter of water, of safe water for consumption. You see that for desalination, we need by far more energy, even if I take the most modern ones with the kilowatt hours per cubic meter, is 3, the least. And to have a wastewater reuse and even a gray water reuse, which is even less, or a wastewater treatment, or use groundwater properly, or use lake and river water and treat it, there is no comparison in energy. So in energy saving, I may make wise decisions when I take into account the relationship. If I add to this the third parameter, for example, the food security, and see from where I have to get the water for irrigation, this may come even more visible, the choices from where I go. And when I put the ecosystems as well, I exclude a number of things. So it is absolutely necessary. It's a way of approaching wiser decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it's all about balance on the extent and way of exploitation of both the planet and the natural resources, something that has not been the case until today. Balance between the key components of the nexus, water, energy, ecosystem, and food. Balance between natural and socioeconomic systems.
Exactly, it's a systemic issue. It is a systemic issue. It is an issue that requires further understanding, and this is where also education comes, and how we train our young graduates, and how they can deal with these issues. It's absolutely clear. And this is also important in dealing with major international problems like the climate change, and like the loss of biodiversity, and the challenges that are linked with this issue. I don't know if you have any other question, but if not, I'm going to.
Mr. Drivas, I think, wanted to.
Yes. I would like to ask you, how prepared are we about facing asymmetric threat? You know, we have plenty of terrorist groups in the Mediterranean region. So, are we? You have already referred about the water. So, are we prepared to face asymmetric threat regarding water pollution?
I'm not sure. Rather, well, I don't want to say we are not, but I don't know to what extent we are well equipped for that. For many reasons, I think this is a threat that needs to be addressed as much as possible as a security issue without a lot of discussion.
I have a second question regarding this issue. How NATO could be capable to face this a potential crisis, a possible crisis about the water. And I remember Pascal Boniface, professor of international relations, that wrote a book in French, The Wars of Tomorrow. And he states in this book that the Middle East is a very dangerous region because not only these countries are have confrontations among them, but there is possible war for water. What's your take about that?
Well, on your first question, and I'm talking about terrorist attacks in supply systems, there are a number of systems to reduce the vulnerability of the systems. And as I said, this is something that is not useful to be discussed publicly. The second thing is the danger of a war in the Middle East on water. I don't believe that we'll have such a. There is a danger. There is a lot of pressure. There are countries like our neighbor, which is very aggressive hydropower, hydrohegemony power. And we know the issue of Tigris and Euphrates. We know the tensions between Israel and Palestine with resources, and also with Syria and with the Golan. But the technology today allows us to have solutions that may reduce this risk, because a war in the area will be devastating, and no one wants that at the end of the day. So, in my point of view, the war on water as such, because we do have wars on water, different types of confrontations, including armed conflicts to a certain extent, might be avoided. I think it will be avoided. To give you, to explain a little bit more, for example, in the Gaza Strip today, through the Union for the Mediterranean, through the European funds, through other contributions, there will be a very big desalination plant. The issue again there is the provision of energy and the terms. So they are negotiated between Egypt. Egypt has promised to give the energy. The changes with the Arab Spring change these plans. But there are, in the Middle East, there are still many solutions. It is more difficult, but still it will not lead to a war, hopefully, the issue in the Nile, because of the fundamental change of the international order linked with this river, with all the rights given initially by the colonial regime of the United Kingdom to the downstream country, Egypt, and now the upstream countries have raised the issue of their own rights, and they have built the huge dam of the Renaissance Dam. And if they insist, if Ethiopia insists to fill this dam, then Egypt for many years will not have enough food. So there are many more issues in the area. Still, I don't believe that we are going to get into a war for that, because there are important ways out. And these ways out are linked with investments into international players. So the whole situation is a matter at the end of the day of hard negotiations, and the Nexus issue is a security Nexus issue. So it is an issue between energy and water and the rest. This is my understanding and my feeling.
On that, since you brought the Renaissance Dam, which was something I wanted to mention as well, it seems that after quite some time, finally they found a solution. They came to an agreement. So I don't know if it's temporary or not, but at least on the 11th trial, if I'm not mistaken, they finally reached an agreement.
Yes, I think you are right, because they have put both water in their in their wine. So I have been part of one of these public, at least, exchanges, negotiations, if you wish, in the French Senate. Not this 2 years ago, in December 18. And one of the things we have discussed there is exactly how to convince all the parties to share the benefits and not insist in sharing the water. The same what I said before, how you can put down the different benefits and how these benefits can be equitably, inverted commas, shared.
So, getting back to our Mediterranean, I wanted to ask you, how serious do you believe is the climate change threat for the Mediterranean region? And we know about the different models, but are there any proofs on that? And again, if you have anything more to elaborate on the issue, since we touched the challenges about the Nile and what the consequences might be over there.
Thank you for the question, because it is a question, usually we stick on the models, and I'm going to give you only results. By the way, I had some more results from the biodiversity loss with the corals, but anyhow. So here is the climate change, what we have in the winters. In some of the winters, in the period, particularly from after 1970 to 2010. They are already 10 years old, but the tendency continues and even is becoming worse. So the red areas are areas where we have dry winters. When I say dry winters, we say days that are below the average. And this is important, that the overall rainfall in the area is not responding to this picture, because we have very heavy rainfalls and floods at the same time. So we have dry periods and then abrupt rainfalls, which is also very dangerous because we have very high erosion, particularly when because of the climate change, the forest fires have increased enormously. So after the forest fire, you have then a very hard rainfall with a lot of erosion, and at the same time you have dry winters. And to show you more the sequence, you can see that here. You see that after 70, we have more red bars, more winters. And these are not models. These are measurements, and measurements of very, very highly respected regional organizations, international organizations. And here are the losses of wetlands in some parts. You see that the losses of marshes in Macedonia, in Greece, reached in the period in the last century, 1900 to 2000, 1930 to 1990, almost 85%. So the same is more than 50% for many countries, for France, and for the total of Greece, as we see, but also in Tunisia, in Egypt, lower loss, but significant losses. And here we come a little bit to the average decrease of the flow of the main rivers. And you see that all of them, almost all of them drop. Not the blue one, which is Nile, the Nile.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because in the sources of the Nile, we have glaciers, and these glaciers melt, and by melting, provide water. But they will not exist forever if we continue like that. And you imagine if Nile has no water at a given moment. And here, where is the glacier? It's not here, here. Here is the glacier of Lewis. You can see that in the beginning of the 20th century, it had a length of 1,500 meters. And now it has less than 750. So it's half. So this is from where water comes into the system. But let's go back and see what we have here. What is red is less than 1 meter from the sea level. So the sea level rise of 1 meter will occupy this area. And we don't need to get into 1 meter, because even with 20, 30 centimeters, we have the intrusion of marine water, and in fact, making this area not any longer productive. And there is where all the food is produced, is in the delta. And we have more than 10 million people. We had more than 10 million, now there are about 13 million people living there. Do you imagine where these people have to go? We are talking about 13 million people. So they are not going upstream, I can tell you. So Nile, with all the problems of climate change, with the loss of glaciers and sources upstream, with the dam, and with the reduced flow, is a bomb in the security of the region. And this is a very important issue to be taken seriously into account where we are discussing about overall security issues. And this is why we are, and particularly I wanted to raise this in this concept, in this forum and this discussion with the Club of Rome, because I'm one of the persons who have pointed out this threat. And what we want is not to move. Here are the risks that move. You see, from 1990 to 2100, and you see that already we have risks to some areas and increase in large areas. We are about to get into 2025, where we have the problems, the yellow is coming up, where the problems are becoming regional, not any longer national or sub-regional, and become permanent. So you see that 3 global distributions and balances of impact, and we get the 4th is total economic and ecological impact that is global. What is the decision about the 1.5 or the Paris Agreement of 2 degrees increase is to stop somewhere at 3 and not move into 4 and 5. So if we get to 4 and 5, we get to irreversible large-scale transitions. Imagine a Mediterranean without a Nile, or with half or less than half of its flow. Already the difference in its flow has impacted on the biodiversity and the intrusion of alien species from the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. So we are talking about disasters. And these disasters are already with us. If you see the cost here in billions of dollars, in the period 1980 to 2011, and I can tell you that in the period from 2011 to 2020, these figures now are higher than what we have the actual, and you see how it goes. These are the costs of disasters, weather disasters throughout the world. So we are not talking about only environment. We are talking about social and economic, serious social and economic disruptions and problems and further challenges. We cannot afford further distraction. And this is something that everybody has to understand. We cannot combine business as usual with our decisions at international level. And this is something that leaders, first of all, have to respect and understand. So a number of things with Nexus security come that, first of all, as I said, we go beyond physical availability due to the very complex interactions. We have to address the variability of the situation without, at all levels, and the risk linked with that. We should focus on the needs of society, but also of individuals. So you cannot take the average. You need to see the poorest part of the society. And this makes things much, much more difficult, because even in affluent societies, we have big pockets of people marginalized at very low income and whatever. And if we don't take care of them, we see already what is happening in Brazil with COVID in the favelas, burying their victims in the sand of the shores. The amazing things. It's very difficult to imagine a society, an international society, surviving with this kind of approaches. So we should focus very urgently to the decarbonization of energy sources, because the climate change is hitting us from 100 different ways. We should meet the ecosystem needs. If we don't have ecosystems, we don't have agricultural production, we don't have pollination, we don't have, it's not any longer a romantic approach, it's a survival approach. Without this, we are lost. And this is what from the beginning the Club of Rome has said, but it was ignored and is still ignored. And requires a management of the competition and conflict between users and users. We need to have integrated approaches, integrated water resource management, integrated coastal zone management, and what we call the integrated methodological approaches. I'm the key author of one book published by UNESCO, UNEP, and the Global Water Partnership on this particular issue. It has been approved by the governments of the Mediterranean, of the Barcelona Convention, but very little applied yet. We teach on that, our students on. So, in my point of view, the Nexus approach should facilitate the enhancement of security, increasing efficiency and productivity of resources, shifting to more sustainable consumption production patterns. This is a very important issue, very closely linked with behavioral changes, and education is there, the main driver, the main tool. Building of synergies, particularly improving governance across the sectors, cross-fertilization, mainstreaming, move to decarbonization, as I said, and enhance the integrated approaches. It is emphasized that the solutions need to be tailor-made, of course. We are discussing the key directions, but obviously it might be over simplification if we believe that at the level we are discussing, we have solved the problems. We can solve the problems, but the directions, I'm sure these are the right directions. Then we come into the specific conditions, local conditions, geopolitical and other, to make this to elaborate specific things. And the anticipated outcomes, of course, are some kind of climate change resilience, and at the end of the day, water, energy, and security and protection of ecosystems, but also a new economy, the circular economy, the new green, blue jobs created, and existing jobs preserved. So this is more or less what I had to say in connection to what we discussed from the beginning, the security issue and the climate change, and how we can address the serious problems of climate change in our region.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting and very straightforward what what you have said. And in order to wrap it up, I don't know if you would have to propose any needed changes and the proper mix of measures to address the challenges.
Yes, I have actually prepared that because I anticipated these questions, and we go to very important systemic approach. We also have to work at two levels. We have to reduce the root causes and the pressures and the reasons for vulnerability of our systems. So we need to act proactively in reducing the pressures and enhance the resilience of the systems. So two things. The one is to avoid further vulnerability, and at the same time enhance the resilience of the existing systems and make them better. And in order to do that, we have three groups of measures, if you wish, or areas. It is the technology, of course, because as we have discussed at the beginning today, technology is providing us, and actually rapidly changing technology, is providing us with means to address serious problems like wastewater treatment, or provision of new water from used waters, wastewaters, or saline waters, or whatever, and enhance the carrying capacity of the systems. The second is the institutional measures needed, regulations and incentives to create the frameworks for that, for the change. And the third, of course, is the behavioral change, which is based on education, information, and a new culture. And these are all, allow me to use this, I have introduced the tetrahedra because tetrahedron is the most stable, as a chemical background, structure on Earth, not on Earth, on universe. So, in fact, the combination here is of the sustainable development on the top, where society, economy, and environment meet. And you see the reason why I have this is, again, giving a space. It is not the same mix we need of economy, environment, societal measures in Sweden, in Greece, and in Bangladesh. There will be different, but it will be there. There is no way that we have development only economic without having the other two. This is clear. So this is a starting point. And in order to find, and within this is the nexus. And in order to achieve that, we need, again, a mixture of different percentages of the three types of instruments I mentioned before, of institutional settings, of science and technology, and of cultural awareness raising, behavioral change. So this is more or less the philosophy and the structure of a transition towards a modern approach of governance, towards a sustainable approach of governance and sustainability, because if you wish to put somewhere governance, here is the interface between the upper part and the lower part, where the governance actually plays the role of adjusting the tools to the needs and the visions of each society, of each problem, and how to deal with that. So I give some examples for institutional legal frameworks. For example, green taxes, levies, charges, indicators about on products, about the energy, water, material footprint, designation of protected areas, of biosphere reserves. By the way, biosphere reserves are not what the name might mean. The biosphere reserves of UNESCO, and in 2 days we'll announce in my capacity as chairman of the the Hellenic National Committee of UNESCO, a new biosphere reserve in Asterousia region in the south of Crete, where the protection is linked with the sustainable development. So it is linked with development, but a sustainable development. So the same is with technologies, the group of technology instruments, starting with technologies, particularly decarbonization of energy. And while I'm going deeper and deeper and deeper in the discussion, you understand how challenging or how questionable might be a choice for going for offshore drilling for hydrocarbons. It sounds as from a different era. So we see all these energy saving issues, water saving issues, rainwater harvesting systems, material recycling, and there is enormous progress in this area, enormous progress. And also in the awareness raising. At the moment, we are, I'm the key author in rewriting the preambular part of the ESD strategy, Educational Sustainable Development Strategy of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, but also the Mediterranean strategy that is under our, we support and have the secretariat of that. And it's very important. It's very important to be systematic from the very early age till the end in the tertiary education as well. So I mentioned that already, and in addressing the security of the system requires, sorry, I think I said I'm going backwards here. No, sorry. I'm not getting into that, it's too technical at the moment. There are the different organizations dealing with this issue in the region, and the different policies also. I'm not going to elaborate too much on that, but what is important is to build the background for policy interventions and investments, and the identification and prioritization of what we discussed before, the Nexus related challenges. These investments are hard and soft. Hard in infrastructures and soft in creating the enabling conditions and creating, you know, the different understanding and changing the perceptions. It is much easier to finance, we found out, green energy, because it becomes very soon profitable. It is not so easy to finance water, unless it is there are mixture, hydro and irrigation and these kind of things. So when it is linked again with energy in Nexus, water also investment becomes more attractive for investors. I may elaborate more on that, but I think at the moment is enough for everybody to understand that. There are many nice examples for small also systems of decentralized combinations of energy. This is one of the Canary Islands. There is one in the Island, Kirk Island in Croatia. There are many, and there will be more. It's not needed to have very high-end systems, and we don't need also to have them connected. So the costs are becoming lower, and there are many interesting combinations that have to be taken into account. The same is, I mean, there are also international bodies that try to help. The Covenant of Mayors, for example, is one, and many others. I don't want to get, and the smart grids, of course, are very much now in the fashion. So for the soft, we need for all these. Sometimes they don't attract the attention of governments or investors, although the best medium and long-term investment is on education and training and on management. Good management saves money, a lot of money, and creates the conditions for better institutions and better monitoring and better responses. So in conclusion, the Nexus space that we discussed a little bit here is a good, let's say, methodology or approach to develop win-win solutions on water, energy, food, and ecosystems. I didn't insist a lot of food, but food is a very important thing. And after what we see with the the COVID, and unfortunately, we predict more of these kind of things for the future. to a certain extent, not going back to self-sufficiency, but going back to some self-sufficiency in food will become a key, I think, a key issue, a key criterion of decisions, of choices in the future. So we need to have enough food in the countries, enough healthcare in the countries, water, clean water, energy, but not energy just to waste energy. We can save a lot of energy. Energy efficiency itself cannot solve the problem. If we have a car with 1/3, 1/4 of the fuel we need today, but we have in place 4 cars, it's the same. So we need also a behavioral change, and all this is part and parcel of the Nexus approach. And this can be facilitated when integrated approaches and silos are abolished or, as I explained, changed. Perhaps you may allow me 1 minute to give you a short description of what we are doing in MIO, apart from having the 130 NGOs from the 28 countries of the Mediterranean. Among them, we are talking about big organizations like the European Environment Bureau, with its own 150 organizations and many, many millions of individual members, and the same is the Arab Network for Environment Development in all the Arab countries with its own 100 members. These are only 2 of our members, and many more. Apart from this body, we have the body of COMSUD, which is the Circle of Mediterranean Parliamentarians for Sustainable Development. It's the COMGES, the Circle of Mediterranean Journalists for Sustainable Development. Is the Big Medis program, which has about 6,000 educators throughout the region dealing with issues of environmental education and education for sustainable development. Is the network of Mediterranean universities of sustainable development focusing on education for sustainable development. GWP Mediterranean, which is a part of the intergovernmental organization Global Water Partnership in Stockholm, is hosted by MIO. It happens that I'm also chair, but hosting is with MIO, and also we facilitate the Hellenic National Commission of MAB UNESCO, as I mentioned before. So with this, let's say, cluster of networks, we try to influence the Mediterranean policies, offer a number of demonstration projects on how to deal with these issues. In Greece, for example, through GWP, we have more than 40, more than 150 interventions, among them the extension of the, with modern means, of the dam in Alexandroupolis in order to avoid having a Nexus issue, to avoid having a new dam, securing having the capture of flood water so that you don't have floods downstream, but at the same time securing enough ecological water for the delta. So these are just, I just wanted to add this because what I wanted to say is that we should not, all of us, stay only on theory. We try to apply what we are saying in the society. And by saying that, I would like, of course, whatever questions, I would like also to thank you for this opportunity to address these issues with some, I think, frankness in an informal setting. in allowing actually for exchange of at least providing some food of thought on serious issues, which is the main, I think, scope also of the Club of Rome.
Well, it was actually a lot of food for thought that you gave us. There is a huge project that you have undertaken, and I would like to thank you very, very much for this very interesting, detailed, and substantiated presentation. You gave us a wealth of information, and hopefully everybody can think about it, and we see how each one of us from their own position and with their own abilities can help in creating a better future for us and our kids. I don't know if someone has something to add or if there is any questions.
If I may speak, I want also on my part to thank very much Professor Scoullos. I think that we could discuss with him for many, many hours. We could have a whole seminar with him. I'm very glad because you have pointed out that the climate change is not fake news, because we listen from many places that it's fake news. I believe that too. It's very interesting that the point of immigration that we will have because of the climate change and the climate crisis.
Yeah.
We are promoting in my company the energy saving, and we're promoting that we have calculated that if we have a 10% energy saving, this could mean 20 million people less immigration. This is something that we have to have in mind. Also, it was very nice the example you gave about the Canary Islands. But I have to note that we also have a same example with renewable energy and solar in Ikaria, in Greece. We have the same thing that is already working in Ikaria. In Ikaria, a project implemented from the Public Power Corporation.
I didn't know that. Thank you. Please send me some to use it abroad.
Of course, I have noted this. I will send you all the information to have it for your next speech. Thank you very much, and it was a privilege to participate in this meeting. Thank you, President.
A great pleasure for me. A great pleasure for me. Yes.
So we take it that next time we'll meet, it's going to be on a venue with people and with a nice big panel, and we'll have the chance to have a larger discussion with live audience and in person and analyze things, you know, on a whole day, and not just trying to put all this information within an hour and a half, which is impossible.
But as we discussed in advance, this is an appetizer for a series of different audiences and thoughts to be somehow, you know, stimulated through.
Exactly. And that's the reason we do that as well.
Very well. So thank you very much, and see you hopefully soon.
Very soon. That is a promise. And okay. Thank you, Mr. Scoullos, and Mr. Drivas as well for your participation. And we'll see you very soon as well.
Thank you very much.